Hello, today on the Nexus, we are looking at the breaking news coming from the Mediterranean Sea, where the Bayesian super yacht, has just been brought to the surface for the first time in 10 months. And we're very glad to be joined by the oceanographer, Simon Boxall. Simon, we're looking at these videos now that have been provided by the Yacht Report. These are their exclusive pictures. They've been there for some weeks now. It's a pretty extraordinary picture.
That's right, it is. And it just shows the scale of this recovery exercise. They've got two large recovery vessels alongside, one of them capable of lifting 5,500 tons. And that's the sort of scale of crane one needs to lift a yacht off the seabed at 50 meters. And of course, it's been down in dark water for a long time. I think there were various comments on that piece of video talking about how clean and sort of relatively clean, apart from lots of sediment over it, it looks. Of course, at that depth, there's not much marine growth. It's beyond sort of a lot of the bright light. So, it's almost as though it went down yesterday rather than 10 months ago.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And of course, bringing it to the surface when it's full of water like that, it is extremely heavy now. But the next step then is to take it to the port of Termini Imeresi, where it will be transferred to a cradle. And then what will happen?
For the moment, it's at the surface. It's going to take them a few hours, probably a day, to completely drain it. So it reduces the weight of the boat. The boat itself, full of weight, full of water, is going to be about 3 times heavier than the boat on its own. So once it's drained of water, it can be put onto a cradle and then taken to land. At that point, they'll take it to a sort of warehouse, some sort of facility where they can start to I suppose basically look at what went wrong, start looking at sort of a forensic view of what was open, what was shut, what the state of things like the keel were. There's a whole list of things, a whole list of questions that need answering, and that will now take place in the sort of relative safety and security of land.
What will the investigators be looking for?
Well, they also need to lift the mast. The mast is separate. They cut the mast free. Lifting it with the mast would have been almost impossible. It's such a huge mast. So the mast will also be recovered from the seafloor. They'll be looking for things like status of the hatches. They'll be looking for what sort of pumps and things were implemented, where life rafts sort of launched and that sort of thing.
And just to go back over the period of this recovery, this salvage operation, we know that one of the divers was killed. And I was just wondering if you could explain the circumstances around that gentleman's death.
The actual recovery started on the 4th of May, but unfortunately, tragically, on the 8th of May, there was some sort of explosion underwater, whether it was a cutting tool or something, and it tragically killed one of the divers. And so everything stopped while that was investigated. And the reason it has taken quite a long time to recover it to the surface is because they had to implement new sort of safety procedures just to ensure that this didn't happen again. There's already been enough lives lost in this terrible disaster.
You mentioned the mast, Simon, and the Marine Accident Investigation Branch of the United Kingdom government also mentioned the mast, of course, in its report. It said that it accounted for around 50% of the wind healing moment. Can you just explain to our viewers, some of whom are going to be laymen, what the wind healing moment is?
Basically, it's the force of wind on the mast itself. So if you can imagine a sailing boat's got a sail up, there's wind blowing on it, and to counterbalance that, you have a keel to stop the wind blowing the boat over. Now, in this case, in the case of the Bayesian, it had one of the largest masts ever built, and the mast is huge. I've actually seen the mast; it's actually been laid out in Southampton at the docks, and I've watched people literally walking up the middle of the mast. It's that big. So the force on that mast is a bit like having a sail up. And so understanding a bit more about how the mast performed, what happened to the mast is going to be important in the investigation. And that alongside the keel not being fully down is really why the Bayesian was pushed over.
The operation has been going on for weeks. It's been very, very expensive. Can you remind us why it's essential to salvage this yacht?
It's important for a number of reasons. There's the obvious one, the forensics of what went wrong and killed so many people. But also, from the environmental point of view, the yacht has fuel on board, it has lots of chemicals on board. And so, from a point of view of pollution, the yacht needs salvaging. And you'll notice, if you look at the pictures, the film coming out, you'll see there's booms around the recovery area. And that's to catch any oil that spills as the yacht's brought to the surface. And then finally, there is the issue, of course, of both a navigation and a fishing danger. If you've got something of this size sitting on the sea floor, that is going to affect navigation, that is going to affect fishermen.
There is, of course, an official Italian investigation into this incident. Uh, how do you assess their investigation so far? And would you propose that they make any changes, for example, with regards to the captain?
The Italians have sort of put the captain on a sort of arrest warrant, which is quite normal. They're sort of saying, look, until we know what's gone wrong, then we don't want you sort of disappearing off, so we can't find you again. So there's nothing unusual in that. And it's up to the Italians, happened in Italian waters. So it is pretty much up to the Italians, first of all, to decide what went wrong and whether anyone was liable. Time will tell, but we know from the Marine Accident Investigation Branch review that came out a short while ago that their view, provisionally, and it is a provisional view, was that this was a terrible accident that occurred due to freak weather conditions.
Simon, the vessel was laying 50 meters beneath the water's surface. On the scale of salvaging that you're aware of, how difficult is that?
It's difficult, but not impossible. The vessel itself is large, but not enormous. So it is all perfectly feasible. The water depths are at the limit, really, of safe diving. So there are issues there, but this is why it's taken a reasonable amount of time, and it will take time to bring the whole thing back to base.